think I might have made some new friends. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through some of my favourite authors that I discovered in 2022. They're not all necessarily debut authors. Some of them have got back catalogues that span a couple of years. Some of them are actually debut authors, but I encountered them first in 2022. There were a couple of authors that I've met for the first time in 2022, but these are the ones that particularly stood out to me. First on the list is Alicia Rai, and I read the first book in the Modern Dating series in 2022. I read The Right Swipe in, I think, maybe February time, and I had such a great time with this book. It's set in a kind of a tech world, which I think put me off a little bit at the start because I'm not very technically minded. So I felt like I would be a little bit kind of lost in what was happening. I wouldn't know what was going on, but I really had nothing to worry about. The story follows Rhiannon and Samson, who have met each other on a dating app and had a one-night stand and accidentally ghosted each other. They did intend to keep in contact, they did intend to see each other again, but communication got crossed, wires got crossed, and they accidentally never ended up communicating. Then, maybe a couple of years later, Rhiannon and Samson are in the same city for a tech event that is about dating apps that both of them have set up. They have both set up kind of rival dating apps about... One is kind of like Bumble, where the woman gets to speak first, and one is a little bit more like Tinder, where it's all based around your photograph and everything. I really loved watching their relationship grow, evolve, come back together while they were going through the whole motions of this. And I am so genuinely excited to see what the rest of the series is going to be like. I have got some very high hopes for this one. And I also know that Alicia has got a couple of other books out. She has got a little bit more steamy books in her back shelf. She's also got one that's called Partner in Crime that I think came out in November of last year that I am definitely going to check up. Next on the list is Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is Weather Girl, and it's the first of her books that I read, but it's her second adult book. I later on in the year read The X Talk, and I got on phenomenally with both of them. Something I love about this book is that it was surprisingly smutty. I love a book that is surprisingly smutty, that you have no idea that a scene like that is going to come out of literally nowhere. And I remember lying in a park near my old apartment. I had a drink with me, I was reading the book, I was listening to some music, and then the next thing, everything started to completely escalate. I had such a great time with this. Something that I also love about Rachel's books is that they have phenomenal Jewish representation. I'm going to make the assumption that Rachel herself is Jewish because they're written so well and so true to form, and that they really include a lot of Jewish traditions, Jewish culture, Jewish holidays, Jewish celebrations, and I really loved seeing it. But something that I particularly love about Weather Girl is that the hero in this is plus size. It's not something that you see a lot of in books, and it's definitely something that I would like to see more of in books. But when you really get to see Russell's vulnerable side, when you really get to see him kind of let his guard down when he's around Ari, it was so comforting to read when you're seeing it happen, as it usually happens that the woman is plus side and has to let her guard down and let the guy in. It was such a comforting take on it to see it from the other side instead. I know that Rachel has got another book called Business as Usual coming out, I think May or June of this year, and it is 100% on my radar, because now that I know I really like her writing style, I really like the stories that she likes to tell, I really like how she kind of crafts her relationships in books, I'm on board. Next up is Alex's Hall. I've heard of a couple of his books. I have definitely heard of the Boyfriend Material series. I've heard of the Something Fabulous books, but this is the first one of his that I've read. This is Rosalind Palmer Takes the Cake, and it's very heavily inspired by Bake Off, which is one of my comfort shows. There is nothing that gets me going on a Tuesday evening like curling up on my chair with cake, with biscuits, and watching 13 people genuinely stress out over whether or not chocolate is going to temper in time. It's my World Cup, basically. So when I heard that this book had really heavy Bake Off vibes, when it had a bisexual main character who was a single parent, I was so on board with this book. But I didn't expect how much I would be on board with it until I got into it, and the writing is so funny. Alexis Hall is such a funny writer, and that is something that doesn't really happen for me quite a lot. I have got quite a kind of dry, sarcastic sense of humour, and I don't really see that mirrored in the pages of books that I'm reading until I picked up Rosalind Palmer Takes the Cake, and it just blew me out of the water. So much so that as soon as I had turned the last page on this, probably even before, I was immediately online to get a copy of Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble, which is the next book in this series, and I think there's going to be another one after that. I cannot wait to get that picked up. Next up is Ashley Herring Blake. Again, I think that Ashley Herring Blake has gotten a couple of other books in her arsenal. She's gotten maybe some YA or something kind of more thriller side. But this is her adult romance debut, and I was hooked on this. I cannot tell you how much I fell in love with Delilah and Claire's relationship, watching it grow throughout the book. Again, this is a story about a single mother, and that's something that I didn't know that I was so interested in until I read a couple of them this year, and it turns out that's something that I kind of enjoy reading, watching how women are dealing with all of that relationship responsibility and trying to juggle the relationship that they have with their children and the relationship that they are forming with somebody in their life. I really, really loved this one. It's a kind of a childhood acquaintances to lovers, I would say. It's very sapphic and it is very steamy. It's one of my highlights of the entire year. It may not have won book of the month that I read it, but it is by far one of the best books I've read this entire year. Again, I loved this so much that I went out and got the second book of the series, Astra Parker Doesn't Fail. And again, there is another book coming out in the series, Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, I think it's called, and it's coming out sometime in late 2023. I have got to get my hands on a copy of it. I did just say that the month that I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care, it wasn't my book of the month, and there's one particular reason for that. This book absolutely could not be toppled. There is no other book that gripped me, grabbed me, enthralled me, kept me reading as much as The Appeal by Janice Hallett did this year. I remember I finished work at about 6. I sat down with the book. I was like, I'm going to read 100 pages before I go make dinner. I'm going to read 50 pages before I go make dinner. I did not get off my chair until about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was hooked on this one. The Appeal is told in the form of letters, emails, text messages, correspondence between the group of people that are living in a small community where there has been a murder happen. And at the start of the book, you don't know who has been murdered, who did it, why, or what people in the town know a lot more than they are putting on, and that everything seems to be. There's also the subplot of a young child in the community who has been recently diagnosed with cancer, and I really enjoyed watching all of the events in this town evolve and unravel themselves before me. One of my friends who had read this before me told me to get a pen, get a sheet of paper, and write down anything that you think is going to be important, or something that strikes you, or something that makes you do a double take or think. The page of my reading journal for this book is just dotted with sticky notes, with thoughts, with kind of like random musings that came to my head as I was reading this book. And I am so proud of myself that the first thing that I wrote down came to fruition in this book. I know that Janice Hallett has got 2 other books. She has got The Mystery of the Alberton Angels, which came out late last year, maybe early this year. And she has also got The Twyford Code, which I think came out early in 2022. And I haven't read either of them yet. But one of my friends has read both and said that he didn't particularly love The Twyford Code, but that The Alberton Angels hit him just as hard as The Appeal did. So I'm really intrigued. I really have to go and pick up both of those now. Next up is Lucy Foley, and I have had the guest list on my shelf for years. My dad read it. My dad really enjoyed it. He thought it would be a book that I would really enjoy, so he gave me a copy of it when I came back from home to come back to Germany maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, and I just left it to the wayside. I kept on saying, oh, I'll pick it up around Halloween. Oh, I'll pick it up in October. Oh, I'll read it at some stage. And then I just never did until Halloween 2022 rocked around. And I was just looking for something that was going to grip me. I was in a really big thriller mood at the time, and I knew that the guest list was one of the ones that was on my shelf. I knew that it was one that a lot of people had given a lot of hype about, and one of my friends had also just recently read it. I think she read it in like May or so of last year and really enjoyed it. Something that did draw me into the book is that one of the characters is named Aoife, and I did say to one of my friends, that's such a big draw in for me, because how often do you see an Aoife compared to how often do you see an Emma or a Charlotte or a Sophie? So just having my name in the book made it a little bit more exciting. But I genuinely spent the entire book having absolutely no idea where I was going to go. I had no idea who had been murdered, who was the one that had murdered them, why, what was the connection that was tying everything together. I feel like I need to go back and read the book again just to see if there's any kind of clues that I might have missed out on or anything that I should have picked up on but didn't. I have got a copy of The Haunting Party somewhere. I genuinely do not remember where I put it, but I know it's somewhere in either my house or my parents' house. And I also have got a copy of The Paris Apartment that I picked up the last time that I was back in Ireland. And I cannot wait for Halloween to come around again so that I can pick it up. Or if I'm feeling a little bit thrillery, I might pick it up a little bit earlier. Finally is an author whose books were so good that I finished the entire series within 2022. And that is Alexandria Bellefleur, the author of the Written in the Stars series, which is kind of like an astrology inspired series. All of the books have got something to do with astrology in some way, shape or form. I believe that there is a dating app in here called Oh My Stars or something like that, where everyone is matched up in comparison to how compatible they are astrologically, which sounds like a really good idea, and it's definitely something that I would have a look at if something like that ever existed. This is again a companion novel series where you have got 3 couples who all appear in the background of each other's books, and the story kind of narrates itself where everyone has something that continues on in the other books that they appear in, which I really, really loved. I know that Alexandria Bellefleur's The Fiancé Farce is coming out early 2023, and I am so excited to take that one up. I think this one is a sapphic romance with fake dating tropes in it, and when it comes to reading, that ticks every single box that I have. Those are some of the brand new authors to me that just completely blew me away in 2022. Were there any new authors that you discovered in 2022 that you really loved? If you would love to leave me a comment but you cannot think of anything that you would like to say, then just leave me the sparkling stars emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.